All right, welcome back to the channel. Let's talk about The Reckoning. This documentary is everywhere. So at first I said I really wasn't going to watch it because I was telling my wife, I'm like, well, what new information am I really going to learn about P. Diddy? Am I going to look at him any different, any worse, any better? What would this documentary do? And I was kind of like, at first I was like, 50 is just kind of putting out this documentary just to kind of slight Puff a little bit more and put a nail in the coffin. And maybe that's the truth, I don't know. But what I will say, I did watch the documentary like a lot of other people in the world have watched it, and I'll say this documentary is the nail in the coffin. This is the Surviving R. Kelly version, or Surviving Diddy basically. And the thing about this documentary, I'd say, is that it's so well put together. And for me, I do look at Puff a little, not much differently, but it puts his whole story together. So my thought about Diddy initially was that he kind of went off the rails, let's say in the 2000s, after he met Cassie, maybe 2010 and later. I figured maybe he started going off the rails as he's gotten older. What I realized from that documentary is that Puff Daddy, P. Diddy, Sean Combs, has been going off the rails for a long time. His childhood friend, I forgot his childhood friend's name, but he said in the documentary that this was a slow build, and I think a lot of people didn't realize it. I didn't realize it. So what are some key takeaways for me from the documentary? So they went all the way from the beginning of his time at Uptown, all the way through the beginning of Bad Boy and everything that happened after that. So there were some key takeaways. So let's start with, for me, the most interesting thing is they kind of talked about the Tupac shooting in 94, and obviously the Tupac shooting in 96 where he died. So as far as Puff's possible participation in the murder, right, allegedly, for me, I'm kind of like, did Puffy set that up? Is it possible? Is it possible that he was involved in it? Yeah, I think it is very much possible. Now, as far as the beef or the issues that Tupac had initially in 94, I think a lot of that came from, as many people who are aware, he had a problem with Jimmy Henchman, and that is what spawned the shooting in 94. Him getting shot in 96 was probably a culmination of the East Coast West Coast issues and what they had going on at the time. Now, did Diddy pay $1 million to have this set up? Now, Keefe D, the last surviving member who was in that white Cadillac in Vegas, he said a couple of years back that, Puffy put $1 million bounty on Suge Knight and Tupac's head. They were gonna do it anyway, and at the Tyson fight, it just happened to be that Tupac jumped on his nephew Orlando Anderson, and that they decided to go ahead and really do it because they really had a reason on top of getting the money. So that was one thing that was very interesting. But the key takeaways outside of that part, with the Tupac murder, I think what I found crazy is that how many people, when you go through and look at Puff's history with Bad Boy and all the artists, how many people did not get paid? And it was always a saying, that if you got on Bad Boy, everybody who was on there left broke and always left in a situation where they weren't getting their money. And when you go through it, it kind of makes sense now. This documentary really tied together how troubled Puff Daddy was, how much people thought he was somebody to look up to, how people thought he was somebody who was, the trendsetter or the string holder of R&B and rap. And a lot of us idolize Puff. Puff is a little older than me, but coming up in the 90s, trying to do music or loving music, he was one of the people you emulated or idolized, in the sense that he had his pulse on everything that was hot as far as music. He was young, and he really did help to change hip hop and R&B culture. Now, for me, what I say with Puff, his whole way of the way he dealt with people, right? He was manipulative, and for whatever reason, I'm like, bro, you really could have just gotten married, had a chick on the side, or extra chicks on the side, and been okay. The problem with him, though, I think that, and as this documentary shows you, his fall to me was far worse than R. Kelly, right? This is probably the furthest fall from grace of a modern entertainer that I've seen. Where Puff was, how people looked at him. And keep in mind, these rumors, just like R. Kelly, these rumors were around for a long time. But this documentary painted a picture for you to see how he abused women. He manipulated a lot of the artists that were around him. Even the thing with Little Rod, you know, the most recent producer that was working with him on that last album, how he didn't even pay the artist. Now, what was also interesting to me, and again, people have been saying stuff about Puff for a long time, was Puff bisexual? It seems that way to me, you know what I'm saying? And it's his business, but it seems very interesting when you look at Kirk Burroughs, his partner who helped start Bad Boy with him, and that was grimy how Puff asked him to sign over his 25% of Bad Boy to him. I don't know why Kirk did that, but a lot of people speculate that him and Kirk Burroughs were lovers. Gene Deal talks about this a lot, Puff's old or ex bodyguard. And I think it makes sense because Kirk Burroughs, he didn't go into what sexually happened, but he did say that Puff not only abused him as an employee, but he talked about how he abused him sexually. So you take that for whatever it is. Now, Little Rod, this is wild too. Little Rod producing all that last album, didn't get his money, and he talked about how he was waking up sore, and sometimes he wake up with girls in the bed, and then other times he wake up and Puff was in the bed with him. That was wild work to me. But my takeaway is that Puff became a drug addict. Puff was already a woman abuser, and Puff was a slimy businessman. And we knew he was slimy, but when you put it all together, this guy was one of the slimiest guys in music business. You know, when you look at Biggie, and it all makes sense now. I always wonder, why did Biggie, I always used to say back in the day, I was like, well, why is Lil' Kim, Junior Mafia, not on Bad Boy? And Biggie's supposed to be his best friend. He's claiming Biggie is his best friend. And it starts to make sense because Biggie had signed his publishing over to Puff. And, you know, Biggie started to write for Junior Mafia and write for Kim and all these people under an alias. And he was writing for them because he did not want Puff to get part of that money. And all of it is just crazy. You know, looking at Biggie, for instance, we don't know if for sure if there was a bounty on Tupac's head. But we do know that after Tupac died, for Puff to insist that Biggie go to California has always been a bad choice. And that's always been part of this conversation. But the fact that he actually stopped Biggie from going to the UK and keeping him in California longer, knowing that they had been warned, it just goes to show you, I don't know if Puff is diabolical and wanted Biggie dead. I don't know that. But what I will say is Puff is the ultimate version of selfish and is the ultimate version of what, you know, you don't want to be when it comes to music. And he was a gatekeeper. He was definitely a gatekeeper, the gatekeeper of hip hop and R&B for a long time. And this documentary ties everything together. All these stories that you hear when you think about Sean doing time in jail, like I said, you think about Tupac dying, you think about Biggie dying, you think about Cassie, you think about all these other girls coming out now, you think about all these producers and all these various people. What's my man Mark Curry? He's been talking about him for years, another artist / writer on Bad Boy. All of this really goes to show that, you know, when it comes to money and power, Diddy was one of these guys that he was never someone who knew how to deal with the power that he had. It was always about, you know, kind of abusing power. You know, we used to laugh back in the day, even when he had the band walking over the bridge to buy cheesecake for him during the making of the band whole thing. We kind of looked at it and said, you know, Puff is, you know, he makes people work to get where they need to get in the music industry. And it's actually looked as a good thing at one point. But when you tie it all together and they put that footage in the doc and you look at everything, you say, man, this guy was just abusing people. This guy was just using his power all the time to manipulate and control people. Now, the last takeaway I would say is this, and it's similar to when you look at the R. Kelly story. Men with money and power, this is for the women. You know, I'm not going to blame the women it's hard to know who's a victim, who's not a victim. We could say when you go and look at Aubrey O'Day, you look at Cassie, like I said, you look at Dawn from Dirty Money slash Danity Kane, and you look at all the multiple other women. You know, you look at Kim Porter, the mother of his children. You look at who else? Misa. All these people. Diddy liked to be involved with his women and other people's women, but this is what I'll say. If you're a woman and you are dealing with a man who has power and influence, there's two sides of the coin. My thought is that some of these women never had to go through this stuff. And at the end of the day, you know, you have to make a decision at some point. And what I would say, if you have a daughter or a woman you care about, Diddy is somebody you don't want the woman to be around, because a lot of times when you get in the fold of luxury, you get in the fold of, you know, your bills being paid, you get in the fold of fame and excitement. Sometimes the trade-off of that isn't worth it. And at the end of the day, this is what a lot of those women went through just being around this guy. So the documentary, for me, it really ties everything together. All these are a lot of separate stories in that documentary are not new, but the way it ties it together, what I will say is 50, if he was playing chess and this was checkmate, he definitely checkmated Puff. I don't think there's ever a way that Sean Combs can come out of prison and ever be looked at any differently than what he is now. And I don't think it could ever get better. I think he's too old, and it's too late to change things around as far as his public image. When he gets out, he's gonna have to go and just live in peace somewhere and live quietly. But that coming back out, keys to the city, New York, I'm that guy, it just ain't that. And it's a big fall from grace. It's unfortunate because somebody with that much money that Puff generated, that much influence, so many lives and tentacles that he touched, he could have done the right thing, right? And we always heard these stories over the years, but what we realize now, when you go through all of the stories tied together in the doc, there's one common denominator. That's Sean Puff Daddy Diddy Combs. So when we look at this is a fall from grace. It's a lesson to be learned. And at the end of the day, he could have done a lot better with all the people he touched and his family. Hopefully they can live and be in peace and be at some point where they are able to live with the legacy he's left on their name. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. If you haven't seen the documentary, I think you should see it. I think it was well put together. It wasn't like a smear piece. It wasn't just throwing out a bunch of accusations. It really puts everything together. Whether you believe everybody in the documentary or not, honestly, it doesn't matter. When there's smoke, there's definitely fire, and there's fire there. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Crucial Convo.